In this video, I intend to highlight the Lucchese bosses starting with Tony Duck's Corallo up until present day. At the end, you can let me know who you think was the best boss as far as the Lucchese family goes. The Lucchese family notably went from having the reputation of being a wealthy family, specifically during Tony Duck's rule, to an ultra-violent family under Vic Amuso. Currently, the family has the reputation of being more businesslike in nature. And just like any other organizations, crime families can experience drastic changes as key positions change hands. Let's call a spade a spade. Tony Duck's and Vic Amuso were total opposites. Tony Duck's represented the old school gangsters, where Vic was the newer generation of wise guys. Anthony Tony Duck's Corallo originated from the East Harlem 107th Street gang alongside the likes of the family namesake Tommy Lucchese. From the early 1950s up until his death in July 1967, Lucchese ruled his family, and prior to his passing, he chose Corallo, who was a captain by then, to succeed him. However, by December of 1967, Corallo was indicted for bribing a New York City water commissioner. He would be convicted in June of 1968 and sentenced to 3 years. In Corallo's absence, Carmine Tremonti took control of the family. Although his time spent as boss was short-lived due to his October 1973 indictment, which was the result of a major narcotics investigation, the French Connection case, to be precise. In May 1974, Tremonti received a 15-year sentence. So with the vacancy of the boss position, Corallo stepped in to claim his rightful place as head of the family. Under his leadership, the Lucchese family flourished financially, because in similar fashion to Paul Castellano, Corallo was business savvy. Back then, a great deal of Lucchese members were involved in the narcotics business, but Corallo preferred focusing on other rackets, such as the firm grip he held on the unions as well as union officials. Construction specifically was the family's cash cow. The Luccheses also had a stronghold on the waste hauling business on Long Island. Overall, Corallo, for all intents and purposes, was the ideal boss. His family, although smaller in numbers than most families, was considered one of the wealthiest. Corallo's downfall took place in 1983 when members of the Organized Crime Task Force installed a bug in Sal Avellino's Jaguar. Avellino, at the time, was a Lucchese captain who also doubled as Corallo's driver. Incriminating conversations took place in the Jaguar regarding construction and, more importantly, the Mafia Commission. As a result, Corallo, his underboss Salvatore Santoro, and the family's consigliere, Christy Ticfraneri, were all indicted, convicted, and received 100-year sentences. Vic Amuso started out as an associate and eventually became a member of the 19th Hole crew, which was led by Lucchese captain Christy Ticfraneri, whose club was in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn. The crew also included Anthony Gaspipe Casso, who would become close friends with Amuso. In or about 1980, Faneri was elevated to the consigliere position, and Amuso took over as captain of the crew. As mentioned, Faneri was also indicted for the commission case in February 1985, along with Tony Ducks and Santoro, thus leaving a void in the entire Lucchese administration. As most of us know, Tony Ducks chose his successor to be Anthony Buddy Luongo, a Bronx-based captain. However, Amuso and Gaspipe would eliminate him by 1986, and Amuso became the official Lucchese boss and made Gaspipe his underboss. It would be an understatement to say that during Vic and Gas's time in leadership positions was the Lucchese family's most violent reign. Granted, the family earned money by means of construction as well as the typical rackets, but starting with Luongo's murder, the hits kept on coming, over a dozen in total. The increased violence caused the FBI to remain laser-focused on the family. The Luccheses also gained the reputation of labeling its members as well as killing their friends. What started Amuso's downfall was the Luccheses' involvement in the New York City Housing Authority's window replacement project. An investigation into that led to Vic and Gas being indicted in May of 1990, although they were tipped off before they could be arrested and became fugitives. Be that as it may, the critical point of the downfall came when they decided to label and attempted a hit on Lucchese captain Pete Chiodo. It was a failed hit nonetheless, despite Chiodo being shot over a dozen times. Consequently, he began cooperating and supplying the FBI with bucket loads of inside information. Amuso would be indicted again for numerous murders, and he would eventually be captured in Scranton, Pennsylvania in July 1991, with information provided by none other than his underboss, Gaspipe. He was convicted in June of 1992 and sentenced to life. Throughout the years, Amuso put in place a series of acting bosses, starting with Al Diarco, who the Lucchese's labeled and plotted to kill. Diarco cooperated and became a key witness against Amuso. Next was Joe DeFede, who eventually cooperated in 2002. Stevie Crea, who's presently doing a life sentence and suffering from stage 4 cancer. Louis Dedone, who's also doing life in prison. And Matty Madonna. Matty was the acting boss who presided over my induction ceremony. He had served 32 years for narcotics and once released was fast-tracked by Vic to take over the family. As with most guys in that life, Matty's fault was to be extremely greedy, and it ultimately would lead to his downfall. The start of his trouble began in 2007, where he and Lucchese consigliere, Joe DiNapoli, were indicted for Operation Heat, a New Jersey gambling operation. He would plead guilty and wouldn't be sentenced until 2015 and receive 5 years. But Matty would never see freedom again. In 2017, he was indicted in a racketeering case that included the 2013 murder of one of the East Harlem Purple Gang's leaders, Michael Meldish. Also indicted on that case was Joe DiNapoli and the family's underboss, Stevie Crea. Prior to the 2017 indictment, the family had a void in the administration as Matty and Joe D were incarcerated. And it was at this time that the family's Brooklyn faction wanted to reclaim control of the family's leadership, as well as to bring back the family's power base to Brooklyn. If you haven't liked this video yet, please take the time now and give it a thumbs up, as it helps with YouTube's algorithm. Also, for anyone who'd like to show their appreciation for videos like this, or help me to continue making them, you can donate with the Super Thanks icon down below, or through the PayPal Cash App links in the video's description. Let me also remind everyone of my blog, especially those of you who still enjoy reading. It can be found at sitdownnews.com and is subscription only. One of the guys who took the initiative to relay these intentions to Vic was Mikey DeSantis. Vic, in turn, approved these plans and made it known that Mikey would be the family's new acting boss. The Lucchese family under DeSantis' rule has been somewhat low-key and operating in a more legitimate way, even to the point of inducting businessmen as opposed to street guys. Coincidentally, DeSantis started out in Pete Chioda's crew. Earlier this month, there were several arrests involving illegal gambling in New Jersey, which included Lucchese captains and members. Among those arrested was Georgie Nexapola, a captain as well as a behind-the-scenes administration member, or more specifically, a shadow boss. Since the family's transition in 2017, Zapola has always been slated for the boss position. Vic Amuso is presently 90 years old, essentially nearing the end of his life. When this takes place, we'll see at that time who replaces him. Until then, he remains the official Lucchese boss.